What is going on, FA Nation? Happy Friday. Welcome to our Fantasy Alarm NBA DFS live stream. As you can tell, no John Impemba. He's behind the glass today. Thanks for producing, John. But I'm happy to be joined by Steve Pimentel. What's up, Steve? How's it going? How's your Friday? How are you liking this 9-game slate we have on tap, brother?
Oh, happy Friday, James. I'm liking it a lot better than I thought I would. You'd think we haven't had most of these teams haven't played since before the All-Star break, but somehow there's still a ton of injury news, which I don't really know how that's possible. But a lot of things going on in this slate. It's a lot more interesting than I thought, and I'm really excited to get into it.
So we actually don't have any teams on a back-to-back, which is nice. So everyone's fresh. Maybe not Carl Anthony Towns as we jump into injuries, who did get in a car accident. It is interesting to note he missed shoot around. He was obviously excused. He has not missed a game in his NBA career. 303 games suited up out of 303 games. So that is interesting to note. He's never sat out. So that's obviously news that we'll be awaiting. On Miles Turner officially ruled out. We all jumped to joy thinking Domantas Sabonis would be the starter. Well, think again. NBA teams are much smarter than us. They are going to start Kyle O'Quinn tonight. So a min-price Kyle O'Quinn will be starting. Joy. Just kidding. Tyreek Evans will be playing. Luka Doncic questionable with an ankle. Trey Lyles is out. Kyle Anderson is out. The return of the max contract Chandler Parsons is back tonight. He obviously will be on probably a 4 or 5 minute limit because, if he plays anything more than that, he'll probably get hurt again. Jaren Jackson, also questionable. Kevin Huerter out. We got official word. Kent Bazemore is starting. So let's Baze more and not Baze less tonight. Serge Ibaka, we were kind of an interesting lineup note. We were waiting to see if Serge was going to start or if Marc Gasol was going to start. Well, the Raptors came out and said Serge Ibaka will draw the start at center tonight. Marc Gasol will come off the bench. So obviously there is something. Maybe Marc Gasol not comfortable with the system just yet. That's kind of sad because he had a whole All-Star break. But, that's just speculation. Derek White is in. He will be on a minutes restriction. Darius Miller is out. Elfrid Payton is making his return tonight, is starting, but he's on a minutes limit, 20 to 25 minutes. Dennis Schroeder is probable. I mentioned before we got on, he got the gold streak back in his hair, Steve. I don't know if you remember his Atlanta days when he was rocking the gold streak. That was peak Dennis Schroeder. He also said in shoot around this morning that he has his swag back now that the gold streak is in his hair. 100 points for Dennis Schroeder tonight, confirmed. Now that he has his swag back. LaMarcus Aldridge is probable. And another interesting lineup note, Luke Cornett is starting at power forward. Noah Vonleh is dead. They just don't play the guy anymore. He's just completely irrelevant. Jumping over to Vegas, like we do on pretty much every slate, we do have some big totals, some not so juicy totals, but this is actually a slate that is very enticing from a Vegas perspective because every game is 217 or higher, including a Memphis game. That's 217, including Memphis, which is shocking. 232 Washington, Charlotte 5.5 point favorites. New Orleans, Indiana 223, Indiana 6 point favorites at home. Chicago, Orlando 217, 8 point favorites for Orlando here at home. San Antonio travels to Toronto. The return of DeMar DeRozan. He is going to get a huge ovation because he is very loved in Toronto. 227 there. Toronto 8 point favorites at home. Minnesota, New York, obviously awaiting the Karl Anthony Towns news, but we do have a total 222. Minnesota 5 point favorites. Detroit, Atlanta 5 point favorites in favor of Detroit on the road. 221.5 there. 217 in Clippers, Memphis, as I mentioned. 2 point favorites for the Clippers. Denver, Dallas 223 -5, and then Utah, OKC 226.5 for the late night hammer. 4 point favorites in favor of OKC. So we have some big totals on the slate. Now, Steve, I know you have something to let the people know.
That's right. And the people need to know that we are crushing it. And coming up to the All-Star break, and now that the All-Star break is past, DFS, not to toot our own horn, but we went into the break strong, and now we're going into MLB season strong as well. And we've added the rest of the NBA season to the MLB package. So if you sign up for the Fantasy Alarm MLB package, you get the Jim Bowden draft guide, the ultimate cheat sheet, complete in-season coverage, including League Sync to help you win all your seasonal leagues. And as I said, you get complete DFS coverage, and that includes the rest of the NBA season as well as we said, the MLB package. So you get DFS coverage, then that includes playbooks, rankings, optimal lineups, over 30 tools, including a lineup generator that supports 6 DFS sites. As if that wasn't enough, you get personal help too. We're in the live chat every day, as well as pretty much everyone else from Fantasy Alarm. So you get experts to answer all your questions about the draft or during the season and DFS. And so you get to be a two-sport athlete. You get the MLB package and the rest of the NBA season. And the second half of the NBA season is just starting, so you get quite a bit with that. And all you have to do is go to fantasyalarm.com/MLB season now. And when you get to checkout, use my name as the promo code, which I've never had my name be a promo code before. That's kind of cool. So use my name, Pimentel, for an additional 25% off. That's fantasyalarm.com/MLB season, promo code Pimentel. And James, your name is a promo code too. I don't want you to feel left out.
Thanks, Steve. I know the saying is like so and so gives out something more than Oprah gives out cars, but I think it should be so and so gives out something more than Fantasy Alarm gives out deals, because I mean, we just give out deals on deals on deals. I think we've topped Oprah, but that's just my that's just my opinion. Okay, we have big news, ladies and gentlemen. Karl-Anthony Towns will miss his first professional game this evening. So let's just jump right into it, Steve. I want to go right to Minnesota. Okay, Let's just go right to Minnesota, because obviously this is the biggest news of the slate. Okay, we already know Gorgie Dang is going to be out, and we know Karl-Anthony Towns is going to be out. So they have basically on their roster Taj Gibson, Luol Deng, Dario Saric, Anthony Tolliver, at least in the front court.
Right.
I suspect Taj starts at center, and I suspect Dario Saric. I mean, he has started at power forward. Do either of those guys become elite plays in your opinion? Because for me, both are now elite plays for all formats, considering they have literally no options other than them. Because who wants to play Anthony Tolliver? And Luol Deng, as good as he's played, as well as he's played, he's still old. So you could probably play all three of them. I think all three of them are elite plays. What is your opinion on that matter?
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever, kind of like you said, I don't think I'll ever be excited about Anthony Tolliver or Luol Deng, but whoever starts is certainly playable at the small forward. Dario Saric is completely elite, and normally I would say Taj Gibson is only a cash play, but he might have 20 rebounds and 5 blocks. The scoring probably isn't going to be there, but he does enough other things that I totally agree with you. Saric and Gibson are elite for sure, and whoever the other starting forward is certainly playable as well.
Yeah, and I think, if we just talk about the rest of the Wolves, because obviously Karl-Anthony Towns off the floor presents a lot of usage to be spread around the wealth. The wealth is just spread around. I think Andrew Wiggins, Derrick Rose, Jeff Teague also become primary plays in all formats. I think, and I'm not going to get crazy and do it, but I would think there's a legitimate case to playing 4 to 5 Wolves in a lineup tonight. I would probably max out at 4, but I think because of how cheap guys like Saric, Taj Gibson, Dang are, and then you sprinkle in Rose, who has a 35% usage rate with Towns off the floor. You sprinkle in Wiggins, who has a 33% usage rate, coming off really big games before the All-Star break. There are a lot of really good plays here in Minnesota. So I think we needed to get that off our chest before we broke it down position by position, because I really think you could play the entire Minnesota starting 5 and whoever their 6th man may be, which is likely Derrick Rose. But let's jump back let's rewind and go back to point guard, where we start off with the triple-double king, Russell Westbrook. Is he your top play of the slate, or are you pivoting, or let's say top spend up on the slate, or are you pivoting to his teammate or maybe a joker of sorts? Who is your top play? Is it Westbrook? Is it not?
It's not. I wouldn't argue if he was, but to me, it's Paul George. And I know John Impemba loves Paul George as well. And part of the reason I'm probably not playing Westbrook as much is because I really love Kemba Walker in this slate. So I'll pay down a little bit, for Walker, and then probably play Paul George as my main guy tonight.
And I agree. I actually like Paul George more on FanDuel than Westbrook, but I like Westbrook on DK because he is just going to get us a double-double bonus points, and then he's going to get us the triple-double bonus points. And he's coming off an 88-point game coming to the All-Star break. So I do tend to lean Westbrook a little on DraftKings. I'm with you on Walker, though. I think Walker's an excellent tournament play. He's torched the Wizards in their previous meeting earlier this year, 47 actual points, 64 fantasy points. Elite play, I don't know if I'd play him in cash games, at least on FanDuel, where he's a little too pricey for my blood. Do you think would you test the waters and play Kemba in cash?
I would. My main concern about Kemba pretty much all year has just been rest and minutes and the fact that, and his workload. And obviously coming off the All-Star break, I mean, I know he was the host and he obviously played in the game, but rest really isn't a concern. So I'll go ahead and play him on FanDuel, especially, I mean, we've already talked on a few of the cheap guys on this slate. You can... I agree his price is high, but you can afford it with all the punt plays on the slate.
Right, and I agree. It's just something that I've never been able to stomach. Kemba at 10K. Yeah. A 9-3 is more, feasible for me. 10K,
I get it.
Let's just break down a couple more point guards in John's playbook, and then he loves Trae Young. I also think Trae Young's an excellent play. We love attacking Reggie Jackson defense at any point. Honestly, Reggie Jackson is not a good defender. Detroit has been very bad in the DVP category all year against point guards. They rank in the bottom half of the league. Who else in this playbook? Like, what are your thoughts on? I mean, we mentioned Teague. Like, I think all the Timberwolves are obviously elite plays. I legitimately think there are 5, maybe 6 elite plays on that team. So we don't need to break him down too much. Do you have interest in Dennis Smith, Tomas Satoransky, Reggie Jackson at all? Any of those guys pique your interest?
Reggie Jackson a little. I mean, Atlanta isn't much better against point guards than Detroit is, so that could be a little bit of a duel there. And Dennis Smith is just a little, we knew his price was going to get to a point where he was no longer a bargain, and I think that's happened. I actually really like Jamal Murray, which, I feel like I probably say every time I come on here, but especially for a GPP, I think he's in play. And then going down a little bit farther, Darren Collison, to me, especially for cash games, New Orleans, is terrible against everyone, but especially point guards. Even with Elfrid Payton back, I'm not worried about. And Collison's been super solid, and his price really hasn't gone up a whole lot. So for cash games especially, I like him.
I like both those guys. I do have interest in Satoransky. The Charlotte front court, as well as Kemba Walker's playing offensively. He's not playing that well defensively. And we saw him put up 35 fantasy points, as John alluded to, against Charlotte early in the year. Reggie Jackson against Atlanta, I mean, again, it's another team you could attack at all 5 positions, no matter who's on the floor. Atlanta doesn't have a guy that you can pick out and be like, wow, that guy can play defense. That's not the case. That's why they rank so poorly in defensive efficiency. That's why they rank so poorly in basically every defensive category across the board. They're number 30 against point guards. So I do like the call on Reggie Jackson there. I'm a little iffy on his Elfrid Payton call, but he did put out the playbook prior to finding out Elfrid Payton was only going to play 20 minutes. Now that we know it's going to be 20 to 25, I think we can safely move off of Elfrid Payton. If you want to do it in a tournament, it's fine. He mentions Landry Shamet as a value play. I'm totally in on Landry Shamet. They already announced he's going to be the starting small forward, even though he's listed as a point guard. They run this three, kind of point guard set. I do like Shamit. He's very cheap. There's not a ton of value at the point guard position today. I think Jeremy Lin is someone we can consider. I even think the two San Antonio guys in Forbes and Mills can be people we consider too, because Derek White is on a minutes restriction. So I think those four are the value plays. Do you have any more value plays? You're ready to move on to shooting guard?
I agree with you. I really like Jeremy Lin. If Luka is out, then Jalen Brunson and Trey Burke. But
right,
yeah.
I mean that's also an interesting conversation, because who ultimately does Dallas start? I mean, we've seen a mixture of Brunson and Burke. We've seen Tim Hardaway steady into rotation. We've seen Dorian Finney-Smith now steadily in their rotation. I'm interested to see who gets the call in the starting rotation if Luka, because this is a complete different roster than it was early in the year. Like
right.
It's very hard to predict. Just say, hey, I mean, they went out and acquired Justin Jackson, so maybe he's a young player. Dallas not really in playoff contention. Maybe he's someone. So I mean, it is interesting if Luka sits, who is the guy. But let's move on to shooting guard, where we have Bradley Beal at least top the list for me on DraftKings, and I know Luka. He's a point guard, small forward over on DraftKings. So we'll just talk about him on FanDuel, or we'll just talk about him here at shooting guard. If you had to pick, if Luka was active, you're playing a cash game. Bradley Beal, Luka Doncic.
Bradley Beal. I mean, that game has the highest total. I feel like he's super safe. There's really no one on Charlotte that I feel like is going to lock him down. And we just know. I mean, we know what Bradley Beal is, and he just produces every time out.
Yeah, and Charlotte has actually become the 28th worst team against the shooting guard position. So, the proof is in the pudding. Give me all the Bradley Beal you can handle in cash games. I don't know. We know the ceiling is there. Obviously, I think it's lowered a little bit with Satoransky back, but I think Bradley Beal is the play there over Luka Doncic. Moving down, John's playbook. I think, at least for me, I think DeMar DeRozan is one of the locks of the slate, considering he had a triple-double in his first game against the Raptors, and now it's the return to Toronto. The first game was in San Antonio. He triple doubles. Now he is returning to Toronto, where he is beloved. There was no bad words spoken about Toronto. He was very disappointed in the organization for trading him. Not about the fact he loved everything about his time there. He wanted the extension. He wanted. So I think DeRozan is going to be super fired up here. I don't know if you think the same. If you prefer someone else in this middle tier, maybe a Donovan Mitchell, maybe a Zach LaVine. I mean, Andrew Wiggins is a pretty elite play now at just a couple $100 cheaper. I guess that's a viable discussion. Do you now prefer Wiggins with Towns out, or do you like the narrative DeRozan going back to Toronto more?
I like the DeMar return to Toronto more. I think you're totally right. Obviously he has hard feelings towards that front office, but he loves the city. I think he's going to want to show out. And Andrew Wiggins, obviously his ceiling's through the roof, and I think either him or Derrick Rose is going to score 30 actual points. I'd be kind of shocked, and they both might. But I just hesitate a little bit. I mean, there are always going to be days he just doesn't show up, no matter who's on the court with him or not, and that just gives me a little bit of hesitation. But obviously, I like them both.
I tend to agree, but I just think the numbers with Rose or with Towns off the floor, are pretty substantial. 33% usage rate, 1.24 fantasy points per minute. I think those are hard to ignore. And yes, there are times where he doesn't show up, but those times have more often than not been when Jimmy Butler was on the roster, been when they've been fully healthy, been when, everyone in the backcourt, Karl-Anthony Towns, everyone's there. We just saw Jeff Teague, Derrick Rose out. Wiggins goes for 50 and 47 fantasy points. So I do think that is an interesting discussion. I think on handle, you might just want to plug them both in and just move on, to be perfectly
Right.
honest. DeRozan, Wiggins, move on.
Hmm.
Who else are you looking at the shooting guard position, Steve?
I like Tim Hardaway Jr. if Luka's out. As you said, we don't know exactly what that team is, but I feel like they're going to need someone to take shots, and he's never shy about shooting the ball. Um, Terrence Ross is always in play, especially in a GPP. Um, those are really the big shooting guards. I mean, I don't see a ton of value here at the position. Do you?
Well, we mentioned Luke Kennard on the podcast last night, and I do think there's merit to Luke Kennard. They moved on from a couple guys like Reggie Bullock, and since Reggie Bullock's been gone, it's been 29 or more minutes in each game for Luke Kennard. The last game we saw over 30. So I do think there's some merit to playing him. They took him in the lottery couple last year, and he's been decent. And again, we're facing Atlanta. There's a few rules. There are a few. When you're looking at the DFS Bible, attacking Atlanta is one of the. It's in big bold letters right on the first page. So I do think there's merit to playing Luke Kennard. Also, Avery Bradley's found some good offense. Also, Kent Bazemore is probably going to be
Yes.
maybe the chalkiest play on the slate. Starting under 5K on both sites, only $4,200 over on DraftKings. It's too cheap. We have him projected as one of the highest owned players on the slate, so I think he's pretty hard to ignore. So let's move on to small forward, where your favorite player of the slate is Paul George. We already established that. He's also one of the locks of the slate. You play him in any format you want. We don't really need to really get into much detail. And then the next tier, I mean, it's George, it's Kawhi, and then it's a big drop. And I think Kawhi is viable. Do I love Kawhi for all formats? No. We just getting word Jaren Jackson officially ruled out, and Bruno Caboclo will be starting. So, pretty convenient that we're on small forward because Bruno Caboclo is here. But after Kawhi, who you can play, and, I would prefer tournaments. He's been up and down for me lately. There's a big drop off. We get Danilo Gallinari at 6'8". I think he's okay against Memphis. Memphis has been playing faster since the trade of Marc Gasol. I mean, he's not. You don't have to lug his body up and down the floor anymore. So they have been playing faster. So I mean, it's not the worst play. I think the next two most viable options we have are Otto Porter and Jonathan Isaac on the flip side. They're going to be matched up with one another. They're both good defenders. They're both starting to shoot the three ball well. They're both coming into their own in their own respective right. Do you prefer one of the two between Porter and Isaac, and how would you play them in terms of cash games and tournaments?
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with anyone who said just play whichever one's cheaper, because I agree with you. I like them both, and I tend to when it's close like that, I tend to not split hairs. If I had to choose, I think it would be Jonathan Isaac. But that's probably just because I'm a Chicago Bulls fan, and I think everything in that organization turns to dust sooner or later. But you can't argue that he's been used the way Chicago's been using him. They've kind of unlocked some of his skills that he never really got to show in Washington. So I think that's a great call with both of those guys. And then just going down a little bit further. I like Jabari Parker as well.
Yep.
And then obviously you mentioned Bruno Caboclo. I am interested if you have any interest in DeAndre Bembry. I think I'd probably rather play Taurean Prince, but Bembry, even though he's not going to start, do you think he's still viable?
I've always been someone who's not a big DeAndre Bembry fan, because when you just watch him play, I don't understand what he does when he's on the floor. He's just one of those stand in the corner guys for me. Yes, different situation, but 21 minutes against the Hawks or against the Knicks in the last game in the All-Star break. He took 4 shots and he scored 4 fantasy points. I guess my concern is what did he do while he was on the floor? He only grabbed 1 rebound. He only had 1 steal, and he scored 1 basket. What was he doing in the other 20 minutes that he was on the floor, other than that really exciting basket he must have scored? So I don't know. I prefer Bazemore. I probably prefer Torian Prince because I've seen the upside from Torian Prince. I've seen 20, 30 actual point games out of him where Bembry, I get it though. $3,300 is very cheap. So like I'm not going to tell you not to. We also have Kabakalo down there though, who in less time does more. I mean, in the 2 games prior to the All-Star break, he plays 10 minutes. He gives us 18 fantasy points. So I think Bruno Caboclo is a very intriguing play. I also don't think Chandler Parsons cuts into his time. I just want to preface that because, with him coming back, people are like, oh, Chandler Parsons. I mean, he's a max contract player, so they're going to get him up to speed and he's going to play minutes. Do I think that happens today? No. So I do think Caboclo is very interesting, and he's flashed a lot of upside given the time. We saw him on multiple occasions late January give us 20 plus fantasy points when given 20 plus minutes. So I do think there's merit there for Caboclo at the value tier. Any other value that you're intrigued by? I mean, we mentioned Luol Deng. I think Luol Deng is an excellent play as long as he's starting. I mean, he's playing 30 plus minutes. Steve, we're both Bulls fans, so we both have a bias towards Luol Deng because he was a great Bull.
Mm-hmm.
Great Bull. He's going to be an all-timer for me. He was my favorite player. But he's played 36, 38, 31 minutes the last 3 games. Like, even as biased Luol Deng fans, the proof is there. So I think the value on Luol Deng is great, and he gets the Knicks, I mean, he gets the Knicks. We don't need to really break that down too much further. Anyone else at the value tier? Dorian Finney-Smith on DraftKings only, 3,639. I'm not playing him at 5,000. You cannot force me. I don't care if he's playing against me, you, John, Howard, and Fensterman. I don't care. I'm not playing Finney-Smith at 5-1.
Even if Luka's out?
Maybe then.
Okay.
But I prefer him at I prefer him at 3-9.
Agree.
I prefer him at 3-9 way more than I prefer him at 5-1 because he's also a stand in the corner guy. Ivan Rabb also going to start tonight over Joakim Noah, who our updated ownership. Joakim Noah is the highest projected owned player on DraftKings. I just want to throw that out there. Let's move on to power forward, where Blake Griffin tops the list on DraftKings at least. I don't even want to mention his name, but I will just say it. Anthony Davis. Okay, we can move on. He's there as well. Take it for what you want. He's $8,700. They said his minutes are going to be restricted going forward. So, do what you want with that. I think Blake Griffin's an elite play, all formats. 8,900 is too cheap, and it's Atlanta. We can, until we're blue in the face, until, we could just, it's Atlanta. Attack Atlanta, attack Atlanta, attack Atlanta at all positions, please. Moving down the list, Lauri Markkanen. Do you think he's a little too pricey?
No, I think the production is there. I think the floor is super high. Basically ever since Wendell Carter went down, he's been great. The only argument against him would be there are like 36 power forwards who are cheaper, who are all awesome plays. But I like Markkanen.
Right, and I think that ultimately decides your fate. I think that's why Lauri tonight is a GPP play specifically because you're going to play Julius Randle over him, knowing Julius Randle's starting tonight and knowing that the Pelicans have already come out and said guys that are becoming free agents or are going potentially leaving are going to play more time while Davis and Jrue Holiday have their minutes pulled back. So Randle's an elite play. Pascal Siakam, I mean, we just saw him go for 1 million actual points the last time he took the floor. Aaron Gordon gets the Bulls. He's been really good. We haven't even mentioned the 2 guys in Indiana who Miles Turner's out. I mean, I'm with you. Totally with you. Ivan Rabb on FanDuel, who's $3,800, is a must play over there. And at $5,600, is it a must play? It's close. He's starting. They don't really have. Are they going to play Joakim Noah 30 minutes? I don't think so. I think Memphis is in a position where they're going to say, hey, let's develop our young guys, right? So I think Ivan Rabb, who like all those, we're basically playing all those guys over Markkanen and Cash is what I'm getting at, right? Like all of them.
Right. Plus the Minnesota guys,
right? Plus the Minnesota guys, right?
Exactly.
Right. So it's like it is going to be very difficult. If you had to pick two, you're on FanDuel, okay? You have to pick two of those guys. And if you need a pen and paper, write them down. Let's go the Minnesota guys, the Indiana guys, Rab, and we're talking FanDuel because that's really where it comes down. We need two. We could play like four of them on DraftKings.
Right.
The Minnesota guys, the Indiana guys, Rab.
I think it has to be Rab and Gibson. I mean, it kills me to not play Sabonis with Turner out because I've been waiting for this. Turner's questionable every day for the last
Right.
3 months, and
Right.
so and he still plays. But how do you get away from Taj and Rab on FanDuel?
I know, especially considering their price tags.
Yeah.
I may lean Dario Saric, knowing he has a higher ceiling than Taj Gibson,
Mm-hmm.
at least in the scoring department. But I get it from a price point play because Taj is so free. So I'm with you. You can play all of them on DraftKings ultimately. So is there anyone we missed, or did we touch all like the
But
important guys?
believe it or not, I did want to mention Bobby Portis. I mean, he kind of has the same problem as Markkanen, but GPP, I think he's got upside. And then Luke Cornett is starting, which on any other slate would be news, and today is just eh.
Right. I mean, Portis and Markkanen are they're very viable in tournaments.
Yeah.
We're not telling you not to play them. There are just 13 other guys that are going to be 25 to 50% owned that you probably can't miss out on. And that's all we're saying. So let's finish it up at center, Steve, where we have the Nicholas up top in Jokic and Vukovic. Do you prefer one or the other? I mean, knowing we're both, we both root for the Bulls. We know how poor they are in the front court. And I think everyone leans Jokic. And I actually think that may be a mistake, even though Dallas is very small in the front court. I don't know if Lucas sits, if Dallas can keep that close. I think Vukovic is going to fly completely under the radar tonight. I think he's an elite play in all formats against the Bulls tonight.
Yeah, I was shocked. Someone in our chat mentioned that Vucevic was flying under the radar, and I mean, to me, he was one of the most obvious picks of the whole slate. Before all the news happened. Yeah, I mean, the Bulls have surpassed the Nets for allowing the most fantasy points to opposing centers, and just let that sink in.
I know, and our number one rule all year long has been attack Brooklyn at the center position, and now the Bulls are worse. So again, take that for what it is. In 3 meetings against the Bulls, in just 31 minutes per game, he's averaging 54 fantasy points, 22 points, 14 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2.7 blocks. So over on FanDuel, where he's only projected on our site at 6% ownership. I know we're probably going to find some value somewhere along the line, but it's very hard for me to pass on Nikola Vukovic tonight. Looking at the ownership, I think you can play in more formats. You want him in your GPPs. If you can fit him into your cash now with all his value, I would say go ahead and do that. But I think the majority of the ownership at center, if it's not going to Jokic, it's probably going to Drummond, at least on DK, where, again, it's a matchup with the Atlanta Hawks. And how can 50 fantasy points per game against them? So he's $800 cheaper, basically averaging the same against the Hawks as Vukovic is against Chicago. Do you still prefer Vuk over Drummond, or do you lean Drummond? At least on DraftKings is $800 cheaper. Drummond's crazy high on FanDuel, right? He's like 10.9 over on FanDuel. Like that's a little too pricey for me personally.
Yeah, if you need the money on DraftKings, go ahead and play Drummond. I'd still like to spend the money on Vucevic. But Atlanta isn't good defensively. There's no arguing it, and obviously Drummond has the results. And you kind of alluded to it. There, surprisingly enough, I mean, other than your boy Kyle O'Quinn, there really isn't a lot of value at center. So I'm totally, this is probably the position to pay up, and as we mentioned, those are the two guys to do it.
I am completely insulted that you just called Kyle Quinn my boy. I have never been insulted more on a live stream, I think. I almost want to just end it right here.
I apologize. I took it back.
I'm kidding. The thing about Kyle O'Quinn, and it's a lot of what Steve Kerr did last year, and I'm not saying that Indiana's going to. Maybe O'Quinn does play 25 to 30 minutes, but Domantas Sabonis is the better player. Yes. He is the better player in every facet of the basketball game. This kind of seems like a filler to me. More, he's going to start because he's more of a traditional center, and Sabonis is more of a, they play him at power forward, they play him at center, and maybe they just prefer him to come off the bench. I just have a problem seeing Kyle O'Quinn playing 30 minutes tonight as opposed to Sabonis getting 30 minutes. Now, the thing is, he's min salary on both sites. He is dead min salary, like $3,000 on DraftKings. We really just need 20 minutes at Kyle O'Quinn. He's a fantasy point per minute guy. And that's where my issue lies and where my, I'm battling. Like, it's just, I have the good guy on one shoulder. I have the bad guy on the other saying, like, play him, don't play him, play him, don't play him. I think he's viable.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be very highly owned, especially on FanDuel, where you could just drop the lowest score. He's projected almost 30%. No surprise. So do I think he's the best player in the world? No. He is someone that can fill up a box score pretty fast, though. So if you want to play him, I think it's fine. I really do think you can play him in all formats. I think he's going to be the chalky center probably of the slate if you're not spending up on Drummond, if you're not spending up on the Nicholas. In between that, though, in between the those are the bread. That's the bread. The meat. Where are you looking in this middle tier? Somewhere like from like 8,000 to 5,000. Anyone pique your interest?
No, not really. If I had to pick, I think Cody Zeller is fine for cash. He's been solid, and he's what he is. He's gonna get his minutes. He's gonna flirt with the double and probably not get it. Dwayne Dedmon, I kind of feel the same way, except I kind of feel the same way. He's been less consistent, but still has 30-point upside. And then Ivica Zubac, I think. Probably GPPs. 28 fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 games. So, don't love that matchup, but as you alluded to, don't hate it as much as we would have, 3 weeks ago. So,
I agree. I think there are better value centers. He is a fantasy point per minute guy ultimately, so he can, on the drop of a dime, put up a big number. Our boy Robin Lopez has been playing really well lately. I personally think his minutes are going to get scaled back going forward. The Bulls did this multiple times. They did this last year with him and Justin Holiday, both after the All-Star break. They were playing 35 to 40 minutes a game, and then they were barely in the rotation. So I think that happens soon. I'm not sure if it happens tonight because they need Lopez big body against Vukovic. I do think he's decent value. I'm interested in Joakim Noah. I really am. Another guy who is a fantasy point per minute monster, and he has always been that way. Just based on his activity, is he the greatest offensive player? No. But he is always on the glass. He is a great passer, one of the best passing big men we've seen in a really long time. Plus, it's a former defensive player of the year. He can block shots. He can get steals. I think we can probably project him in the low 20s a minutes, $3,800. I do have interest in Joakim Noah for tournaments. They do need to play other guys in Ivan Rabb and Bruno Caboclo. I don't think they're going to play 48 minutes. So I do have some interest in Joakim Noah. But that really wraps it up for me personally. We did oversight on one guy, probably because there's a million power forward plays. But Paul Millsap on DraftKings is only $4,600. Now, I bring that up because the last game before the All-Star break, Paul Millsap went for 52. 25 points, 13 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 block, 2 steal. And he's 4,600. There's no Trey Lyles. I think Paul Millsap's back in this rotation, and he is going to be completely overlooked because there are 100 other plays. So I want to just throw Paul Millsap into the player pool that we didn't mention. But if that does wrap it up, I'm going to give a shout out to Mitchell Robinson, John's boy. I think he's too expensive on FanDuel. I think he's too cheap on DraftKings. Anyone else, Steve?
Yeah, there's some more guys from the 2011 Bulls that we haven't mentioned. We got Derrick Rose, we got Noah, we got Dame, but no mention of Kyle Korver. Oh, we had Taj Gibson too. It's really ridiculous. But no, I think we should leave it on that note before I start recommending Brian Scalabrine.
And Rip Hamilton, also great coming off the pick and rolls. I think Rip Hamilton makes for a great play tonight. But that does wrap it up. We have 19 minutes for roster lock. John is in chat answering all your questions about the optimals, about the playbook. Steve and I are going to hop in there for the next 19 minutes. Thank you guys for listening. We are out. Good luck tonight.
Good night.